Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's my topic is management of dental luxation and avulsion injuries in permanent dentition. Trauma to the dental region is a common occurrence in children, and estimates suggest that 25% of all children will suffer dental trauma during their developmental years, with more than 60% of these reported to be luxation type injuries. Because of this high frequency, dentists and dental specialists who treat children should be familiar with the principles of managing dental trauma. The purpose of this lecture is to familiarize the orthodontist with the management of dental luxation and avulsion injuries, which by their nature, that is malposition and treatment requirements, orthodontic splinting or alignment, can fall within the purview of the practicing orthodontist. The proper management of luxation and avulsion injuries requires an understanding of the immediate and short-term response to the involved tissues, and the involved tissues are the periodontal ligament, pulp and alveolar bone. Pulp response and survival depend on the type of the injury and the stage of root and development. The diameter of the apical foramen is the most important factor in pulp survival. Teeth with open apices show a higher survival rate, especially with the less severe injuries such as concussion, luxation, lateral displacement, and extrusion. The other two types of injuries, that are the intrusion and the avulsion. Pulps of intruded and avulsed teeth with closed root apices rarely survive. The necrotic pulp from potentiating the process of progressive root resorption, endodontic treatment with calcium hydroxide is recommended within a few weeks after the injury. Later, when no signs of root resorption are evident, calcium hydroxide is replaced with traditional endodontic therapy. In a significant number of cases, that is 15% to 22%, the pulp may undergo calcification. This usually starts coronally and may completely obliterate the pulp chamber. Pulp canal obliteration more frequently occurs in teeth with open apices that have experienced a severe luxation injury, and seems to be a sequel to revascularization and or innervation of a damaged pulp. Since only a minority of these teeth will develop future pulpal necrosis, endodontic treatment is not usually recommended. However, because of the difficulty of performing endodontic treatment after pulpal obliteration has occurred, some endodontists recommend prophylactic treatment. Once root formation is complete and pulp obliteration is beginning to apparent, internal resorption is an infrequent finding, with that is 2% to 4% with luxated permanent teeth. Second issue is the bone. Bone luxation injuries are often associated with fracture of alveolar bone. Fracture lines may be located at any level from the marginal bone to the root apex. In addition to regular periapical views, radiographs with varying horizontal angles, an occlusal view and or panoramic radiography or focused cone beam computed tomography (CBCT) can be helpful in determining the course and position of the fracture lines. In these cases, both the tooth and the attached alveolus need to be reduced and stabilized. The type of stabilization required depend on the stability of the segment after repositioning. Large mobile segments may require more stable fixation for a period of 4 weeks, and smaller segments that reposition may be treated with lighter stabilization for a shorter period. Clinical examination may reveal granulation tissue in the gingival crevice or the secretion of pus from the pocket. Loss of marginal bone frequently occurs with intrusion injuries and other injuries associated with alveolar fractures. Now comes to the management of trauma. With an understanding of the common tissue response that follows a traumatic injury, the practitioner can better manage the different injuries that may occur. The management of traumatic injuries to be discussed is based on guidelines published by the International Association of Dental Traumatologists, that is IADT. So I will discuss now the two types of injuries, that is the luxation and avulsion. The luxation injuries are classified as concussion, subluxation, extrusive luxation, lateral luxation, and intrusive luxation. The most noted change over the past 30 years in the treatment of these injuries has been the change to short-term and flexible rather than rigid splints to stabilize the luxated, avulsed, and root fractured teeth. An extension of these methods has been the use of technique to orthodontically rather than manually reposition teeth. The PDL is anatomically classified as a fibrous joint similar to other joints in the body. Rigid and long-term stabilization can result in hard tissue healing or ankylosis. The routine use of physical therapy after an orthopedic joint surgery is because functional stimuli depress osteogenesis but enhance fibrous tissue healing. Hence, luxation and avulsion injuries are best stabilized by flexible means for only 7 to 10 days. If the displaced teeth can be readily repositioned by hand, then the wire may be directly bonded to the teeth. If some further repositioning is required, then orthodontic brackets can be placed to include stable teeth, mesial and distal to the injured teeth. In the early mixed dentition with only central incisors, erupted primary canines and or primary molars may be bonded. A light braided or nitide alloy wire is then ligated in place. Then comes the concussion and subluxation injuries. The difference between the two is concussion is an injury to the tooth and supporting structures without abnormal loosening. That is, there is no mobility in concussion injuries, but there is mobility in the subluxation injuries. The concussion, which is an injury to the tooth and supporting structure without abnormal loosening or displacement, but it is tender to the touch or to tapping. The frequency of pulp necrosis and canal obliteration is low, that is 2%, with necrosis occurring in teeth with completed root formation. Now comes the subluxation, which is a similar injury except for the presence of increased mobility. Slight bleeding from the gingival crevice may be seen, which indicates damage to the periodontal tissues. Usually no immediate treatment is required unless severe mobility and or multiple tooth injuries exist. In this situation, a flexible splint for patient comfort can be placed for up to 2 weeks. To relieve occlusal interferences, glass ionomer cement can be applied on the occlusal surface of the posterior teeth to open the bite temporarily. A soft diet for 2 weeks is recommended. The frequency of pulp necrosis and pulp canal obliteration ranges from 26% to 47%, always occurring in teeth with completed root formation. Progressive root resorption is very infrequent, that is 4%. Now comes the lateral displacement. Lateral displacements occurs when the tooth is displaced in a direction other than axially. Because of the lateral support of adjacent teeth, this direction is often labial or palatal and is accompanied by a comminution of fracture of the alveolar socket. If the tooth is labially displaced, then it should be repositioned along with any attached alveolar bone. Lacerated gingiva should be adapted to the neck of the tooth and sutured. Light wire or orthodontic stabilization is recommended for 4 weeks. When the crown is palatally displaced, the root apex is often displaced through the vestibular-labial plate, locking it in this position. Repositioning requires labial digital pressure over the apical area and on the lingual side of the crown to unlock the apex. Forceps may be needed to disengage the tooth from its bony lock. The tooth is gently repositioned into its original location. This procedure may require intraorbital regional block anesthesia on the appropriate site of the maxilla. When treatment for lateral displacement is delayed, that is more than 24 hours, the tooth is often consolidated in the new position, making reduction difficult or even contraindicated. In these situations, orthodontic appliances can be used to reposition the tooth gradually. Periodontal and pulpal status should be radiographically monitored. Completed root formation is the major factor associated with the development of pulp necrosis. Pulp survival is 93% with the incomplete root formation as opposed to 23% with complete root formation. Progressive root resorption is also uncommon here with this injury. Now comes the extrusive luxation. An extrusion injury is characterized by a partial displacement of the tooth out of the alveolar socket. The tooth appears elongated and is excessively mobile. Treatment involves gently repositioning the tooth and stabilize it with the light orthodontic wire for 2 weeks. If the injury is treated many hours after the injury, then orthodontic brackets and a light arch wire can be used to intrude the tooth. Pulp survival rates are 90% if the tooth has a wide open apex. In cases with completed root formation, pulp survival is less than 50%. Progressive root resorption is also significantly lower. In this case, there is 7% than with the avulsion or intrusion injuries. Pulp canal obliteration occurs in 24% of cases and is more frequent in teeth with incomplete root formation. The patient should be endodontically evaluated if several signs and symptoms suggest a necrotic pulp, then endodontic treatment is indicated. Now comes the intrusive luxation. The least common displacement injury in the permanent dentition is intrusive luxation, a displacement of the tooth into the alveolar bone. These injuries are associated with the comminution or fracture of the alveolar bone. Pulpal necrosis, progressive root resorption, and marginal bone loss are common sequelae to severe intrusion. IADT guidelines recommend allowing mild intrusions to erupt without intervention. If no movement occurs after 2 to 4 weeks, reposition orthodontically or surgically before ankylosis develops. If the tooth is intruded more than 7 mm, surgical or orthodontic repositioning is recommended. Manual surgical repositioning has been shown to increase the frequency of complications, hence we prefer orthodontic extrusion. In addition, our research has shown ankylosis may develop as early as 7 to 10 days following the injury. Hence, we prefer to initiate orthodontics within the first week following the injury for anything but a very mild intrusive injury. A tooth that is tightly wedged into the bone with no mobility will not move under normal orthodontic forces and may predispose to ankylosis. These teeth should be luxated to produce some mobility before orthodontic activation. Severely displaced teeth embedded deep into the bone may also need to be partially repositioned to allow the placement of orthodontic appliances and access for endodontic treatment. Because pulp survival with closed root apices is uncommon, pulp extirpation and calcium hydroxide fill are indicated within 14 days of injury. Teeth with immature root formation also should be observed for pathologic abnormalities since most 60% of these pulps will not survive. Suggest as necrotic pulp, then endodontic treatment is indicated. These in 0.5% to 3% of all dental injuries and is characterized by a complete displacement of the tooth out of the alveolar socket. This injury is accompanied by a comminution or fracture of the alveolar socket. Critical factors to the long-term survival of these teeth are the physiologic status of the PDL, number 1 point, second is the extraoral period, and number 3 point is the stage of root development. Also, storage medium is important and method of stabilization. These 5 points are very important. Approximately 90% of the teeth re-implanted within 30 minutes showed no root resorption. The best storage medium is in patient's mouth, and parents or guardians should be instructed over the telephone how to reposition the tooth back into the socket. If the tooth cannot be repositioned, then it can be placed in the vestibule or under the child's tongue. If this is not possible, the tooth should be transported in a proper storage medium. The Hanks Balanced Salt Solution, HBSS, a tissue culture medium, is commercially available to dentists and has been shown to improve the viability of remaining PDL cells. Milk may be a good storage medium as any other for up to 6 hours. The tooth should not be stored in water. The type of treatment for an avulsed tooth ultimately depends on two factors, that is the maturity of the root apex, either closed or open, and the viability of the PDL cells. The condition of the cells depends on the storage medium and the time out of the mouth. The clinician should classify the tooth into one of three groups before instituting treatment. Number 1. PDL cells that are most likely viable as a result of immediate or short-term reposition. Number 2. PDL cells may be viable but compromised as a result of dry time approximately 60 minutes or less and kept in a storage medium. Number 3 is PDL cells are non-viable as a result of oral dry time longer than 60 minutes. So this is the basic criteria. Now comes to the treatment of avulsed permanent teeth with closed apex. A tooth with a closed apex that arrives at the office having been replanted after a short time has an excellent chance of survival. The orthodontist should clinically and radiographically verify the position of the tooth. After cleaning the area with water, spray, saline or chlorhexidine, a flexible splint is applied and worn for up to 2 weeks. Endodontic treatment should begin 7 to 10 days after replantation but before removing the splint. The tooth that arrives at the office in a physiologic storage medium or after a dry time of less than 60 minutes should be replanted by the orthodontist. The root surface and apical foramen are cleaned with saline and the tooth is soaked in saline while preparing to replant. A local anesthesia is administered and the socket is irrigated with saline. The alveolar socket is examined and any fractured or displaced socket wall is repositioned. The tooth is slowly replanted with slight digital pressure and the normal position of the tooth is clinically and radiographically verified. A flexible splint is applied and endodontic treatment should begin 7 to 10 days after the replantation but before removing the splint. If the closed apex tooth has dry time longer than 60 minutes, then the PDL cells are necrotic, hence the eventual outcome is ankylosis and root resorption and the eventual loss of the tooth. Before replantation, the orthodontist should carefully remove attached non-viable soft tissue with gauze. Endodontic treatment can be performed before or after replantation. Replantation is performed as previously described and a flexible splint is applied and worn for 4 weeks. To slow down osseous replacement of the tooth, some have suggested treating the root surface with 2% sodium fluoride for 20 minutes before replantation. Now comes to the treatment of reversed permanent teeth with open apex. Teeth immediately replanted with open apices are treated as previously described but are not endodontically treated since the pulp may revascularize. If that does not occur, then endodontic treatment will be indicated. Teeth with open apices in a proper storage medium or with a dry time less than 60 minutes should be replanted as previously described. Before replantation, the topical application of antibiotics, that is minocycline or doxycycline, has been shown to enhance the chances for revascularization. 1 milligram per 20 ml of saline for a 5-minute soak. The pulp space may revascularize, however, infection-related root resorption is very rapid in immature teeth. Therefore, close endodontic monitoring is recommended. Teeth with open apices and a dry time longer than 60 minutes have a poor long-term prognosis. They should be managed similarly to teeth with closed apices. Tetanus prophylaxis should be administered if the child's immunization status is compromised or if the tooth or wound is dirty. Antibiotic coverage also should be prescribed in the first week, that is penicillin or amoxicillin, in an appropriate dose for age and weight. Avulsion injuries with closed apices rarely show pulpal revascularization. As a result, with an extended extraoral period or a closed apex, the pulp should be extirpated after waiting 7 to 10 days and before splint removal. Calcium hydroxide should be placed in the canal to help prevent root resorption. After 1 month, calcium hydroxide is replaced by a definitive root canal filling. Placing calcium hydroxide too soon, such as immediately after reimplantation, will promote inflammation. That can lead to PDL damage. Legaden and colleagues have suggested that long-term calcium hydroxide root canal filling may also have deleterious effects. This was all about this trauma management. Thanks.